Okay, you win. One thing you have to understand is that— Wait! What now? You have to do a couch gag first.
Were you killed?
Sadly, yes. But I lived.
One thing you have to understand is that even during the franchise's longest hiatus, ideas for Godzilla movies never stopped flying around Toho. But most of them would inevitably be shot by Tomoyuki Tanaka, who felt the next entry in the series deserved a decent budget to be executed, and was waiting the right moment for this to happen. The moment finally came in the early 1980s, after years of development and planning, and most of all, a group of fans called the Godzilla Resurrection Committee pressuring Toho to release a new movie already, and this is totally serious, I'm not making this up. And so, in 1984, we finally got the Return of Godzilla, or simply Gojira as it was called in Japan. This movie, as you will see, starts a mostly new chronology in the franchise, disregarding everything that happened after the original film and picking up 30 years later. Therefore, all the movies set before Return are known as the Showa era of Godzilla flicks, named as such because they were all released during the Showa era of Japanese history. This new chronology became known as the Heisei era of Godzilla movies, because they were released during Japan's Heisei era. Most of them, anyway. This is, by quite a long shot, the most consistent period in all of Godzilla's history. Your mileage may vary about the overall quality of any given movie, as always, but the series managed to maintain a pretty decent level of production values through its 10 years run, meaning you will never have to jump from this straight to this. The Return of Godzilla was an attempt of returning to the franchise's dark roots, not only as a response to the then current scene of the sci-fi genre, but also because Tanaka wanted to reconnect with the adult portion of the fanbase, who had become alienated with the more fantastical and child-oriented approach the franchise had taken in its later years. So yeah, this is a dark and gritty reboot of the Godzilla franchise, way before this kind of stuff became popular. By the way, are you guys keeping tabs on how many trends this thing invented? Whoa, these guys are not fooling around with the whole dark and gritty, are they? I mean, there isn't any other scene like this in the movie, but this is a high contender for creepiest one in the series. The ones responsible for this massacre are blood-sucking insects that attacked the crew during a storm the previous night. The only survivor of this bloodshed tells the authorities that he witnessed the awakening of a giant monster during said tempest. When confronted with pictures of Godzilla from when the creature attacked Tokyo 30 years before, the man can confirm that it is, in fact, the same beast. And the insects from before are parasites that mutated after feeding from Godz's blood. So those pesky little things from Cloverfield, here, The Japanese authorities are rightfully concerned about Godzilla reappearing after all this time, but at first decide not to tell anyone about his existence in order to prevent general panic. This all changes, however, when a Soviet submarine is destroyed not far from the coast of Japan. Naturally, the Russians blame the Yankees of destroying their toy, and so the tension between the two nations escalates to a boiling point. With a nuclear war about to break out, the Japanese government sees no option except to reveal to the world the real author of the attack to the submarine. But the Ruskies and the Americans are not satisfied and want to see Godzilla eliminated. So they offer to drop nukes on top of Goji if he ever lands in Japan. Because the only thing the Soviet Union and the United States can agree on is the need to use nuclear weapons to solve their problems.
Господин премьер-министр, не применив тактического ядерного оружия, мы не видим другого способа уничтожить Годзиллу. Мы просим вашего согласия.
He's right.
Cute. This proposal leaves the Japanese feeling... and they kindly refuse it. But not before hammering, and I do mean hammering, the movie's anti-nuclear adds up in the viewer's head.
我が国には非核三原則というものがあります。核は作らず、持たず、持ち込ませず。今度の場合も私はこれを遵守したいと考えます。
This is no time to be discussing principles.
こういう状況だからこそ私はあえてこだわるのです。世界の破滅につながります。それが核というものです。非核三原則が我が国のエゴイズムだと言われるのなら、それは認めざるを得ません。しかし、核を使いたがるのもアメリカとソ連のエゴイズムではないでしょうか。
And you thought Kong was a sneaky bastard. Godzilla starts consuming the radiation from the nuclear reactor and then vanishes, following after a flock of seagulls that fly past him. Turns out he, like the birds, followed the Earth's magnetic fields to navigate. And so, an ambitious plan is conceived to lure Goji into a volcanic crater. There are a lot of these in Japan, guys, it's just that convenient, and throw him inside of it. Of course, the electromagnetic transmitter necessary for the plan demands time to be fully operational. Time enough for us to get some sweet Godzilla action. Back to Tokyo, holy sushi! This is my favorite part of watching these movies in order. In 30 years, the city went from this to this, and that's crazy. This transformation is reflects of how Japan became the second biggest capitalist economy in the world in little over 20 years after World War II. And that's kinda going to play a big role in a later movie, but that for another time. Anyway, at the Tokyo harbor is anchored a Russian freighter that actually holds a missile control room. But when Godzilla appears at the bay and hits the ship, the launch device gets damaged and the countdown started. The ship's captain makes a desperate attempt at stopping it, but it's in vain. There's now a nuclear missile making its way to Tokyo.
Oh, those Russians.
The monster is finally in town and starts making his way through the city in shot-by-shot recreations of the original. But that doesn't excuse the fact that in 30 years the planes didn't learn to keep their distance from a monster that can breathe atomic fire. Tokyo isn't completely defenseless though. because the government had secretly been developing a weapon to protect Japan in case such a catastrophe ever struck again. And so the Super X is deployed, and with it any chance to call this movie dark or gritty. Armored with a state-of-the-art titanium and platinum alloy, the vehicle is more than capable of withstanding Godzilla's initial blast against its hull. You could even say that the Super X is very thick! This thickness gives it more than enough time to shoot cadmium shells, cadmium being a chemical element used in nuclear reactors to control the amount of radioactivity released by the fission reactions, straight into Godzilla's mouth. Since he's basically a walking nuclear reactor, that should, in theory, slow him down enough to... Oh no, not again! Are you sure it was cadmium in those shells? The people of Tokyo start to approach the fallen monster and celebrate this victory. But there's still the matter of the Soviet nuke. The Americans agreed to help, launching another missile that intercepts the first one when it is just a few dozen kilometers above the city. Out of cadmium shells, the Super X is no match for a recharged Godzilla, that this time goes through the vehicle's thick armor like it is nothing. Thankfully, by then the electromagnetic transmitter is ready and gets activated at the top of Mount Mihara. It works, and the monster is lured away from the city and into the trap. Godzilla screams and falls into the depths of the earth. And still, for some reason, everyone seems very sobby over the fact that they just got rid of a major nuisance on their lives. Go figure. I mean, I guess they were trying to evoke the ending of the original movie, but that one ended with one of the characters giving his life to kill Godzilla. Not to mention that another character spends a good chunk of the flick trying to convince everyone not to destroy the monster. This movie has neither of this. That being said, this film does a very good job of updating the original one's anti-nuclear message, getting through how insane the Cold War had become, with the paranoia between the two major countries being a big deal in the script. And it comes from the guys who saw firsthand how awful atomic weapons could be, so their fears of a nuclear conflict are well founded, giving the whole movie a much needed shot of relevancy for a new decade. Unlike, a certain movie that randomly tries to convey a green Aesop that couldn't be more disjointed from the main plot.
He's right.
Also, when it fails at being dramatic, it more than makes up for it by being fun. This is a full-blown, high-stakes disaster flick, complete with the main character trapped inside a building for a good chunk of the movie. Oh yeah, this film has characters and stuff. You know the drill, there is a guy, the guy's sister, another guy who's into the guy's sister, and a scientist. I'm not gonna bother you with all that. But there is one character I will give you this storyline, and it is this guy.
こんなとこでいいか。
なんだこれ。
でっかい顔して歩くんじゃねえこの野郎田舎者が信じが悪きゃ都会人になったそう思ってんだろお前
He later helps the main characters to exit said building.
この野郎死んだふりしやがって逃げろ
and in the way out ends up in the path of the main man himself, having to run for his life.
大男総見に知恵が回りかねかこのバカ野郎バカ野郎
And that's the end of his story. Does he die? Does he live? I don't know. I just know that this guy is one of the most badass characters in all of the franchise history. May his last words against Godzilla echo through eternity.
このバカ野郎バカ野郎
Where was I? Oh right, Disaster Flake. Something like that wouldn't be tried again for over 30 years. So I appreciate this movie very much for trying to stick to the series and, for that matter, the genre's roots, while at the same time updating it to a new decade and also trying something bold, even if the overall product had its missteps. But any problem this movie might have had would more than be solved by the follow-up, that would put Godzilla against one of its most intimidating foes yet in a truly remarkable sequel and favorite of the fans.